I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy Dore, here with Misha Pollan and Americans comedian Kurt Metzger. And Victoria Nuland is a senior U.S. official, served under Obama, now back under Biden. Under Obama, she was very instrumental in the coup in Ukraine in 2014 when she was caught on tape plotting with the U.S. ambassador who the next leader of Ukraine should be. And here she is now with a major role in the Biden administration. And she was speaking to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace about the next phase of the Ukraine war.
There was a piece in the New York Times mid-January, Helene Cooper and Eric Schmidt. Again, when you quote unnamed administration officials, I realize this isn't my first rodeo. I understand that. Who said that our reluctance to provide Ukraine with weapons to strike Crimea directly is softening. And the article goes on to say the logic, according to these officials, is only when Ukraine shows Russia it might lose Crimea will Putin get serious about negotiating.
So I'm going to go back to the way I framed this before, which is that there is a drone base in Crimea where the drones that the Iranians have given Russia are being launched from. There are command and control sites in Crimea that are essential for Russia's hold on all of the territory, including the land bridge. There are mass military installations on Crimea that Russia has turned into essential logistics and back office depots for this war. Those are legitimate targets. Ukraine is hitting them, and we are supporting that.
You could tell she just looks over all of Europe as a big, delicious cake.
That's why before the coup in 2014, she was handing out cookies to the protesters. So she's talking about Crimea, and she's talking about supporting Ukraine to give it the weapons to hit Crimea and maybe even take it back from Russia. And Crimea, just a quick background, Crimea was long been part of the Soviet Union. In the 1950s, it was transferred by the Soviet Union leadership over to Ukraine, which was then a Soviet republic, as basically a gift to Ukraine, as this administrative move. But the people of Crimea have always traditionally identified with Russia, and since Ukraine became independent in the 1990s, there's been a movement in Crimea to be independent. And in 2014, when the U.S. backed a coup in Ukraine, with Victoria Nuland playing a major part in that, Russia very quickly seized Crimea because Crimea is the home to its most important naval base. And the Russian government argued that given that there's just been a coup in Ukraine and this government's threatening to join NATO, we can't let our most important naval base fall into NATO control. That would be a disaster for our security. So Russia has controlled Crimea ever since 2014.
Well, that was its first step to conquering Finland.
So this speaker here, Aaron David Miller, who's a former U.S. official questioning Victoria Nuland, he mentioned this New York Times article about this new thinking in the Biden administration warming up to helping Ukraine strike Crimea and even take it back. And this is the article he's talking about. It's from January 2023 in the New York Times. U.S. warms to helping Ukraine target Crimea. This is what it said. After months of discussions with Ukrainian officials, the Biden administration is finally starting to concede that Kyiv may need the power to strike the Russian sanctuary of Crimea, even if such a move increases the risk of escalation, according to several U.S. officials. Still, despite the additional weaponry, the Biden administration does not think that Ukraine can take Crimea militarily. And indeed, there are still worries that such a move could drive Putin to retaliate with an escalatory response, aka possibly nuclear weapons. But officials said their assessment now is that Russia needs to believe that Crimea is at risk, in part to strengthen Ukraine's position in any future negotiations. So the Biden administration doesn't think that Ukraine can actually retake Crimea. They just want Russia to think that Ukraine might be able to, and that they think might help Ukraine in future negotiations, even though they know that Ukraine can't actually take Crimea. And even though they know that it's increasing the risk of nuclear war, because then it goes on, the Biden administration has come to believe that if the Ukrainian military can show Russia that its control of Crimea can be threatened, that would strengthen Kiev's position in future negotiations. In addition, fears that the Kremlin would retaliate using a tactical nuclear weapon have dimmed, U.S. officials and experts said, though they caution the risk remained.
Wait, so is it that they believe that if Russia pulls out of a treaty, that means they're more our friend, like how we were trying to say to them?
It's similar logic, yes. So yes.
Oh, they like us.
Yeah, there's still the risk they could use nuclear weapons if we give Ukraine more weapons to hit Crimea. But you know what? It's just a risk. Maybe it's worth taking. They've dimmed. They have dimmed.
Hey, turn those fears down. Yeah. I'm trying to sleep. They're a little bright.
So quick recap on who Victoria Nuland is. She was caught on tape in February 2014 plotting who the next Ukrainian leadership should be after a coup.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay.
No, they were just asking her advice because there was a protest. She really wanted to join NATO and enjoy the freedoms of it. The incredible freedom of like your gas main is exploded and you're cold.
Yes.
And then she's just helping out. You're putting this in the wrong context, Eric.
Yes.
That's why she's talking like it's her own personal like chessboard.
Yes, and that's why also on that call she said famously, "Fuck the EU," because the EU wasn't moving fast enough.
I forgot about
in
that
supporting
part.
U.S. plans. Fuck the EU. So that's Victoria Nuland in 2014, and here she is this year bragging about the bombing of the Nord Stream 2.
Senator Cruz, like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
We had nothing to do with it. But we're very gratified it's blown up.
Oh my God. On Law and Order, they'd be like, no, I didn't kill him, but I'm glad he's dead.
So here's some more on Crimea. So again, Crimea was taken by Russia in 2014 after the US-backed coup. And when Russia did that, this is the kind of response it got. Here's Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton says Vladimir Putin's Crimea occupation echoes Hitler. So Russia taking a territory where the majority of the people actually want to be a part of Russia and doing so after a US-backed coup in the country threatens Russia with losing its most important naval base. That to Hillary Clinton echoes Hitler. And
the people who mad at them fought with Hitler, by the way.
Exactly. That's right. And by the way, in all this talk about Crimea and helping Ukraine retake Crimea, all of it ignores what the people of Crimea actually want. And we know what the people of Crimea actually want from U.S. government polls. So there have been these referendums in Crimea on whether or not to join Russia. And the vast majority voted to join Russia, and this was held in 2014. Now, the U.S. doesn't accept those referendums. It says that they were illegitimate. But U.S. polls show the majority of Crimeans think that those results reflect the will of the Ukrainian people.
That doesn't make it legitimate.
This is a poll carried out by the Broadcasting Board of Governors. That's a U.S. government institution, and Gallup, a Western polling firm. And it says, tell me if you agree or disagree. The results of the referendum on Crimea's status, which is to join Russia, likely reflect the views of most people here. 82% of Crimeans say yes, it does. Okay. Here's another poll reported by Foreign Affairs in 2020. Again, this is not RT. This is Foreign Affairs, the establishment U.S. foreign policy journal. And the headline is, "To Russia with love, the majority of Crimeans are still glad for their annexation," that annexation by Russia. And Foreign Affairs says this, "Our surveys in 2014 and again in 2019 show that Crimeans were and remain mostly in favor of the Russian annexation. That popular sentiment complicates the West's prevailing view of the seizure of Crimea as an aggressive land grab."
So we're going to pretend that's not a thing.
That we're going to pretend that's not a thing, and we're going to even now risk nuclear weapons being used just to help Ukraine threaten Russia with taking back.
That's why you have to use nukes, because the people. It's like, think of on Rotten Tomatoes when some awful crap movie comes out that the critics love, or like Dave Chappelle's special, all viewers high ratings, and then the lowest rating from critics. It's that kind of overriding of the will of the people.
And that's now threatening us with an even worse escalation inside of Ukraine. The U.S. claiming to be on the side of Ukraine in defense of democracy. Here they are overriding the will of the majority of the Crimean people and thinking about flirting with nuclear war.
That's not what democracy, Aaron. It's when we, when they say our democracy, it's when that 6.7% gets their way is democracy.
Doing live stand-up comedy in Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Nashville, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, and Hartford, Connecticut. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets and become a premium member. Get access to all our content.